Hey, everybody, welcome to the Challenge Podcast with John Chapman. I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, and it's good to have you with us today. It's cooling down out there. They're expecting some high winds tonight. But that's all right, because we are going to blow our own wind in here today. You can come find out more about us by going to sign up at Rumble. You can like and share that. You can find us on Facebook, the Challenge Podcast with John Chapman. You can find it there, too. We have over 103 recording, 103 podcasts now. And I look back at that, and I'm pretty glad for that. So there's a lot of content that you can access. If you're hearing this for the first time, we have a lot of amazing conversations. We've had with a lot of different people. And likewise going to do so today, talking about Sioux Center, Iowa, and what's going on at the library there. And I'm not even sure which direction this is going to go, because I'm just reading into it. I've only heard about it from the news. We've got some access from Iowa Standard's got a couple good articles about this. And Glenn, thanks for being in studio today to have this chat again around this kind of stuff. I appreciate it. When you were growing up, how often did we access the library?
I didn't even know we had one. Someone told me we had one at school. I couldn't tell you where that was.
I knew there was one in the school, but if somebody sent me to the library, I felt like I was in trouble. It was almost like,
no question.
Yeah. Go to John, stop talking, go to the principal's office was the same as John, stop talking, go to the library. And so I'm just being honest, right? Because when I got to college, I actually realized there were some resources that were valuable educationally. And then I've never used them much since. I think when our kids were little, Johnston's here in the Des Moines area, Johnston's Public Library, we signed up to get cards there so we could check out children's videos and maybe a couple of books, but not much past that. Mm-hmm. And I had an experience with the Johnston Library I'll get into a little bit later, because this doesn't surprise me a little bit. Some things are going on apparently in Sioux Center, Iowa, in regards to this. And I'm glad you're here today, because I need a sounding board to go back and forth about this, because this is an issue in the state of Iowa. Libraries, publications, books, the term banning books is widely thrown around in this state. And it's a highly heated and contested political headbutt going on. You say library and you say books, and it's like two mountain rams get together. One of them claims to be the Democrat Party, the other one claims to be Republicans. And then you find both the LGBTQ community in that, and then the Christian conservative community get into that. And they both rear back on their hind legs. All you have to say is library, and the horns come down and boom. It's like that. What is going on? Why do we think this is in our society today, that this is such a big deal, at least to start, in your estimation?
Well, this is an interesting story, and over the last couple of days, I just kind of checked into it. But the interesting thing about all this to me is I would say, since Donald Trump was elected, there's a lot of things that Americans were finding out about that are going on and have been going on that they would never agree to. And I think this is one of those topics that most American families would never agree to the content that we're about to talk to. They never would. Right. And we're beginning to discover more and more and more that this stuff has been going on for some time. And it doesn't matter if it's Iowa, it's a decently conservative place, or Illinois or New York or wherever, but it just seems like it keeps surfacing over and over again with kind of a common theme where, I would guess in my grandfather's generation, not only would this not have been tolerated, this would have been absolutely an outrage. We're not talking about book banning. We're talking about the protection of children and content. And a lot of it also begins to digress into what parental rights do the parents have. So, some of the things that we'll talk about, Germany banned books. Well, that's true, but those were forbidden from the entire nation. Can't look at them, can't read about them. And it was just topics that Hitler didn't like because they're contrary to his agenda. But this is something quite else. And the fact that it keeps surfacing is, if you've been following it for a while, it's like, well, of course it does. Of course it does. But if you don't, and I think there's some Iowans that don't realize kind of the agenda macro that's been going on for some time in this country, they begin to see this and they're going, what in the world?
Right. Glenn, when I was in high school, I think it was a sophomore year, we were in English class, and we were going to take a literature section. I wasn't in a literature class, we were in English class, and the teacher took liberties. And she was a good teacher. Like, I had no complaints about the teacher. She said, we're gonna each gonna have a choice to read a book. These are all famous books by famous authors. And so literally, that she spread them out from the library, of which I'd been released from prison, and walked up to the front of the room there. She had all these books down there. Some of them I kind of heard of, but most of them not so much. I was the band head, right? I was the tuba player. So, if you have a study hall, you're just going to go play games in the band room. And so I just meandered up there and went, oh, okay, I'm gonna grab this one. And the book was, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And this book, gosh, forgive me here, very famous author. I wasn't going to bring this. I just can't remember. She was highly famous. I'll think of it before the show is up. I promise. I'll look it up here. And I'm typing it right now. I Know Why the Caged. There it is. There it is. And so I picked that up, and I went, well, that seems interesting. Yeah, Maya Angelou. And this is a 1969 autobiography. Okay, so story about her growing up. And I didn't know at the time. I just thought, oh, that sounds interesting. There's probably going to something I'm going to learn from this. I know why a caged bird sings. Interesting concept. And so I started reading this book. And I don't remember how early into the book it was. And I don't remember much else about the book, but I remember it being written from the vantage point of a 10, 11, 12-year-old girl. And I believe it's Maya Angelou's story. And so there's a section of the book where I'm sitting there reading along. And again, not comprehending much, and I don't know if I was supposed to be taking notes or not, but it enters into a several pages worth of how her uncle used to sexually abuse her. And it was fairly graphic. Like, I could, of everything, this is what's interesting to me, of all the things about that book that I read, this is the only thing I remember, right? Sophomore, male. I'm reading this, and this is the only thing I remember out of the book. And I could tell you today, the scene, the uncle, what was happening, how it happened, and all this. So at that point, I shut the book and I went to my mom and dad. My mom, at least. Dad was probably at work. And I said, you know what? It would have been like me as a sophomore to go, I'm not going to tell mom or dad. But the scene itself was so disturbing. Now, law enforcement. We were raised in law enforcement. We saw some disturbing things, very disturbing. But to read this was disturbing. And I took it to my mom. I said, Mom, I'm supposed to read this book for literature. And I said, I'm not sure this is good for me to read. Now, that's not like me, right? Sophomore boy, it's just like, I'm going to hide and figure out what the rest of this book has to say. But it was disturbing because of what was actually happening. So I took it to my mom, and believe it or not, that our folks took it to the school. And the school said, well, this is widely expressed. This is they probably quoted this page, in 1969. This is Maya Angelou. All right, this is a famous work. And it was a famous work. It is a famous work. And they said, if you don't feel comfortable, if John doesn't feel comfortable reading it, and you don't feel comfortable having him read it, then he can read a different book. And that's it. And so I did. I don't remember what that book was. I have no clue. And so I didn't finish the book. So I don't know what disgruntledness happened there, or what, I'm sure the school was kind and everything, but I remember reading that. But my point is that as a sophomore, you read this and you're uncomfortable with the content. And that's the only thing I remember about the book, is what content is in there. So apparently there's appropriate and inappropriate information for children growing up. And that's an argument that I'm finding interesting. You said in World War II that Hitler was banning books that went against his political ideology. Mm-hmm. Well, what I think is interesting here is that soon as anybody in the community says, hey, I think this is sexually inappropriate and too explicit for a child to be able to access, the left goes, no, this must be published, which is a counter agenda, which says to me something's happening that needs to happen with the left to say, no, we just sexualize this country.
And that's what discredits that whole position to me. It's like, you would think, right, there at least be a couple things you could come together on. This would be one of them. It's like, listen, no, this isn't good at all. And I would think, I've got some old timers that are in the Democratic Party that don't even know this is going on. And they would never be on board with this.
Right.
At some point you say, no, this is not cool. That we're long out of politics here. This is destructive in many ways. Let's get together and make sure that this just doesn't happen like this.
Right.
And the fact that it keeps surfacing time and again in all kinds of different fashions is problematic, and it's disturbing because there's a lot of good people that just don't realize that this has happened. And then you see such a pushback when it's revealed, right? You would think, well, maybe we should stop, right? It's like the illegal aliens that come across the southern border, and how various departments in the federal government said this is $1 billion slave trade organization down here. Billions of dollars transfer hands down here as people are moved back and forth across this border, and the political left is completely silent on that. Like it's not an issue at all. I kind of put this in that type of category.
I think you're right. I think you're able to put in that category because this all of a sudden has nothing to do with, and I know the conservative or Christian community is going to be probably usually the first people, but I'm finding that's not necessarily the case because there's even a gay community out there that says, look, this information is too young for children.
Yep.
Do I promote their lifestyle? No, according to the scriptures, it's a sin attitude and a sin lifestyle. I'm not saying I hate them. That's just a fact. And that separates them from God in many ways, just like our sin natures do when they're activations, when they're operating. So when this kind of thing's going on and the conservatives and the Christians go, hey, we shouldn't have that content in there. So I agree that content we might not agree with, but now we get into this strange field of freedom because
all of a sudden freedom, right?
All of a sudden freedom is the issue, right? And so you're like, okay, so all this content's in the libraries, and the libraries have tons of content. It's not like you can't stumble across. I mean, for crying out loud, you and I were pretty young when our dad would say, hey, look at this crime scene. There was the picture. It's like, yeah, we couldn't go see a movie without an ID over the age of 18 and watch what we just watched right there. But there was context brought to it with understanding, and the parent got to decide to do that. The thing that's bothering me about the Sioux Center Library thing that's going on here, see, you can, I here's my line. It's like, all right, so maybe there shouldn't be certain things in the library, or maybe it's hard because you don't want freedoms to be able to be stopped, but at the same time, why in the world are they fighting so hard that they're saying, hey, it's not our fault this 12-year-old checked it out? No, the 12-year-old didn't check it out. You checked it out to them.
Right.
And that's the problem I'm having.
Right.
Okay, so maybe the parents should be more discerning. I agree. I posted on the Iowa Standards thing. I said, absolutely. The parents should absolutely say, heck you, public libraries. And you're right. Somebody said, well, maybe the parents should. I said, that's right. We should just stop using them then. Parents should just say, forget it. You're right. We should start educating our people that way. So that's the problem I have here is what responsibility does a public institution like this have in bearing this out? If I go to the C store and there's a kid there that buys alcohol or an adult there that buys alcohol, they say, I got to see your ID. They don't go, oh, if you buy this, it's on you, kid.
Nope.
Why is this so much different? And why is that a problem?
Well, it's interesting. It's a couple things came to mind when you're talking. One is you're referring to the political action group called Gays Against Grooming.
Oh, yeah.
And they're from California. I've done some research on them, and there's some people there that are on the forefront of pushing back on all of this. So it's gotten to the point where even the gay community isn't happy with it. That shows you where we are. So there's a lot of people in that community. So this is absolutely ridiculous and needs to stop. And in fact, the Gay Against Grooming lobby, if you want to call it that, their political action group, you can get them online, read their statement. I agree with everything they say. Their lifestyle is something different, but I agree with everything they say. They are included in the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group, Gays Against Grooming, for that statement, for their position on that. So that just shows you how crazy the world's become. It's just coming upside down. And then the other thing was, yeah, okay, there should be some sort of a statement here at the bare minimum that says there's adult content in here, and you must show an ID. And it's interesting, right? You can get on MTV and Rush Hour will come on. Jackie Chan, Chris Tucker, the comedy Rush Hour. Right. And they'll do a 2-minute spiel of warnings for triggers on Rush Hour.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, no joke. Like, you're about to see this most hideous movie in the world. And I'm going, what are you talking about? This is some funny stuff. And there's some inappropriate things. There are. But it's nothing like the warnings that they're posting there. But yet, something like this is not a problem at all. At the very least, and if I was in a library and a kid came in with, first of all, I'd want to know, okay, why is the book here in the first place? Why is it here?
That question has to be asked.
It's got to be asked.
Has to be.
And at bare minimum, oh no, it's going into a special location where it would have to be checked out by an adult if it's going to be here.
Absolutely.
I don't care if that's in a glass enclosure with a key and a lock. Again, secular world. If I was a secular guy in a Christian world, I go, oh no, oh heck no, that doesn't come into my store.
Right.
Period. Full stop.
Right.
It doesn't come into my store for any reason. We don't support that. What goes on in these books, we don't support any of that stuff. But at the very minimum, put it in a place where it can be accessed only with the librarian unlocking the door and checking the adult's identification and saying, "This is on you." Because you're right, in a thrift store, you're not going to, or a gas station, they're not going to give alcohol away to a 12-year-old.
Nope.
Not knowingly.
Correct. And I think that's the problem we start to get into here, because when this is, again, just as political politics and the strength of power, they're trying to say this is not, when we start talking about the term indoctrination and you start to see the undercurrent of this sort of thing going on. To me, again, it's not that all the board would have to do is say, you know what, this should be in there. And we as a board are concerned for our community and our children. And I'm telling you, man, I was at work today, and every now and then I get hit with this really, really boiling blood, angry side of me that just shows up. And all of a sudden, A440 eludes me because I can't hear anything while I'm working on these pianos. And I'm just like, ugh. Because the thing that really, the hypocrisy that I struggle with so much of this is that you've got school districts and libraries seemingly in the same camp.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these aren't two different camps. In Sioux City, Sioux Center, this is a library that is the town, run by the town. Mm-hmm. And of course, you have to have a board of trustees to do that. Then you have to have management. You have to have a president of that, and all these kinds of things. But then you have the public schools, and it seems like anytime this stuff comes up, one side picks one side. And the thing that irks me is, here's a library that's saying, well, we're going to keep the book. Okay, that's fine. We checked our legal status and what's lawful and unlawful. And I believe in law. And I mean, if it's law, then it needs to be changed if we need to have it changed.
And go through the process.
And you have to go through the process. So if you're complaining about what the book is in there, but it falls categorically under that, then somebody has to have the money and the chutzpah to go after that. I get that. But the thing that irks me off is I'm tired. My most favorite bumper sticker to pick on is the teachers' unions and adults. They get bumper stickers, teachers to do, and probably, this is a guess and an accusation, libraries that say, I vote for kids. If you vote for kids, then you insist on a book like this having no responsibility of the library to get into a kid's hand, you're a criminal. You're a dang criminal. I don't care what party you are. If you go, I vote for kids, which means they should be able to read sexually explicit content, and we should bear no responsibility of guarding them from that in this public library format. When they say, well, this isn't a responsibility, you should be in jail. Now, I have compassion where compassion is due. But when they start taking that stand, and the public schools have done it for years and years and years, and the teachers' unions have done it for years and years and years. I vote for kids. No, you don't. You're voting for your salary, and you're voting for administrations. And by the way, you're turning children against their parents every single day if the parents don't follow your social agenda. You folks are criminal. It is not your business, and this is how communism and Marxism works. You reach to the children by bumping out the parents. Mm-hmm. And this is the same thing here by disassociating responsibility. And Sioux Center Library better wake up. And people, and matter of fact, the communities and the state better wake up and say, it's time to bear some responsibility.
I totally agree.
Absolutely.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I thought I had a graph on this. I just got something from the Illinois Policy Institute. Yeah. So these are teachers voting for kids.
Oh no.
Sorry, bro. Here it comes.
I'm going to mute my button right now. I'll take care of this.
This
Mr.
is from the Cato Institute. Okay. That follows education and all this type of thing. And the voting for kids folks. Okay. So since 1970, we have had a 200% increase in American public school cost. 200%. And with that, reading scores have not changed. math scores have gotten worse. Science scores have gotten far worse from the Cato Institute.
Yep.
The blue line is the money going out. All the other lines are showing you what the advantage is. So nobody's voting for kids. Give me a break. It's if you were voting for kids, you'd want these kids to be functional in society, be able to fully understand finance and budget by the time they graduate, begin to develop some type of work skills like the trades or other things that would help the community in general, right? So that they'd be successful and on their way. And none of this is happening at the public school level, just full stop. There might be a few very small groups of schools in the country that are really trying to advocate for this, but they're very small. The Department of Education does not support this at all. So when you see this type of thing, it's hypocrisy right out of the gate, because by putting out this cliche, they're trying to lull the public into thinking that they really do. The problem is if the public investigates, and that's why these stories are important, and it begins to surface what's really going on, you'd never be on board with what the teachers' unions do as far as this type of student activity goes on. You just never would.
Right. Glenn, one of the, so we just had Des Moines School District's election. And one guy out of Beaverdale, and I heard him during an open discussion, one person, the two biggest questions asked is how we're going to improve Des Moines schools. And number two, how are we going to earn back the trust of the voter, the parents, after what's gone on the fiasco, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Roberts. The one guy who was running, who was not a current board member, he was the only guy I ever heard once say, look, we need to go to a test-based system where we're looking at the numbers of what's happening with the kids and their growth. We need to look at our kids getting better at reading, our children increasing in their knowledge in math. And he acknowledged right away, he goes, we're in a tough place. He said, those scores are low. He said, and he wasn't blaming anybody. He's just saying, can we use a system that says that's what we're looking at so that we can decide what we need to do from? Why is it he did not get elected? And all the remaining board members who have already been there, who have lost all trust, remain in the seat.
Yep.
But the one guy who said it is the kids' growth that should matter didn't get elected. Tell me, societally, we haven't flipped already in regards to this.
Well, it's full speed on agenda.
Totally.
It just reeks of it. They put out the accusation to the parents, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. But when someone's as simple as that, just said, why aren't we evaluating results? Right. What's the problem with that? And they shoot the guy down. He doesn't get back. There's no accountability for what they did getting this, school superintendent in place in the first place. It all reeks of the agenda. And I don't know. I've had this discussion with some of my good friends in Illinois, why the public puts up with it. I don't know, because I don't know about you folks in Des Moines area, but the taxes are high here.
Indeed.
Especially property tax.
Yes.
Now, not Illinois high. Admittedly, I was there, I can tell you. But they're high. And what are you getting for your taxes? You would never go to the car store, cough up $100,000 for a green Volkswagen Rabbit and say, man, I hope this thing, sorry, there's no engine in there, but you're just going to have to live with it. And we're going to keep the same salespeople in charge. You'd never tolerate it. But here in Des Moines, all the parents are like, well, okay, whatever. Either A, we don't like our kids, or we're not willing to get involved. And my hat's off to the parents in the public school system that have gotten involved.
Right.
They just go into the schools and wait. No. We need to talk about this. And luckily those parents exist, or it'd be full free fall.
Right.
But there's so many people, they're coughing up this tax money and they're like, well, whatever. Yeah, our kids, this is what's going on. They're not learning. Test scores are down or way down in the case of Illinois. And that's fine. No problem. No accountability. We're not going to sit and, have an in type of inquiry. We're not going to have, a full blast test, and they're easy to do. Just take the test and see where our students actually stand at graduation. We're not going to do any of that. So what are we doing? I don't know.
I have a thought on that. Do you have a thought on why that is? Why the people? I have a pretty serious thought on that. So this is where I think we drag the church into it. This is where I think we drag the pulpits into it. This is where I think we drag out what societally we believe Christianity is. And the reason I say that is because to be in Christ is different than be self-labeled or labeled by somebody else a Christian, which to me is lost currency value.
Totally.
It is at a record low.
Earned it.
That's right. The currency of the blood of Jesus has a very low value in the church. The currency of his whipping, the scars, and the crown pounded through him and being nailed, and then giving up his own spirit while suffocating, has very low value in the attorney investment field. And the proof of that is that when we say, where are the parents? Well, a portion of them sit at home on Sunday morning, usually single parents, and just don't know any different. And they're in a situation where they're just trying to get by.
Yep.
And I'm going to say there's
That's
some
very real.
problems that you can point at and say, you know what, I can blame you for this and this and this, but it's a fact. And I do have compassion for that scenario. I really do. That needs to change. But you have church attending people that are just satisfied with the I'm blessed movement. They're just satisfied with God is good. They're just happy that that's the case. And with that being said, from the pulpits, and I wrote an article, how long has it been? 18, 19 years ago, criticizing Johnston School District and criticizing the pastors of Johnston, going, how is this happening? There's so much ungodliness is running around everywhere, and nobody says anything about it. So when we talk about a school district like this, then obviously people are just comfortable with going to church and just feeling good when they walk out the door. But why isn't it from the pulpit? And why isn't it? And it's not pastors. It's pastors' responsibility to teach truth, but it's a pastor's responsibility to not get soft, watery, sugary, or foolish like that, because people need to be challenged to be somebody different when they walk out, not patted on the back for who they are. Because those kind of parents go out and look around and go, hey, wait a minute, that happened at the school? I'm not sure that we're supposed to be tolerating that. But we have a very tolerant people, and I think it's because the pastors are weak. I think it's because they're weak.
That's a huge part of it. I'm sure that's a huge part of it. And there's also this lack of, okay, if I believe in a faith at all of any kind, Christian in our case, and I follow the Lord in that way, so I'm being discipled. And so what would Jesus say about some of these things? And he's always about, you sacrifice yourself for others. You make sure that your kids are learning. And that's the responsibility of the dad. I know we've talked about that here before. You're not there taking over the world. You're not telling, hey, listen, it's going to be my way or the highway. It's nothing like that. But you're very involved, and it's at a sacrificial level. Okay, going to a school board meeting is a sacrifice of your time.
Right.
It just is. Yep. It's a possibility that you're going to lose favor in the community by speaking up. Case in point, and this is maybe on a little different level, but a colleague of mine, I talked to him recently, and he's got two older kids that are grown. And one of his older kids had written a paper that was required on some topic that was a little bit, possibly controversial.
Yep.
And so the kid wrote the paper, and my colleague had to fight the administration, trying not to fail him for the paper that he had written.
Oh, man.
And so this guy says to his dad, well, Dad, I'm just not going to do anything controversial anymore and graduate. I'm just going to get it done and graduate. And why? Because college is very expensive, and professors have unlimited power on what they can or can't say or do. They're considered gods in our society.
Yeah.
And so if you want to pass and get on to the next stage of your life, you better get in line. And that's what we do in society.
Right.
I don't want to be looked at poorly. I don't want people to be mad at me. It's the school after all. And that's our first issue, is we think that these people on the left have good intentions for us, our kids, in society. And that is absolutely false. And I'm not sure what other historical things have to happen to show us that.
Yeah.
But so you're not stepping out and just being a jerk. You're just stepping out and saying, no, that's not going to work. And the sacrifice that me and my family had to make when we knew this stuff was shaking out in Illinois, okay, then we'll raise our own kids.
Right.
We'll teach our own kids school.
Right.
We'll make sure they're getting teachers and other people to come in and help them with reading and math and science and all those other things. And we'll take care of their philosophy.
Right. Right.
I don't need the school to do that for me at all, because they're completely wrong. And these are my kids. So if more people that claim Christ, and I know we use that title as a death insurance program, if more people would claim that he's real and that this is a sacrifice that has to come, then it will be one.
Yeah.
It'll be your time, it'll be your money. And I'm not saying that homeschool is the only way to go. I'm not saying that at all, but it will cost you something to get involved. And the more things that begin to surface, like Sioux Center, Iowa, about things like this,
Yeah.
hopefully more people, parents are standing up going, well, maybe I should go to the library.
Yeah.
And talk to the librarian and see what's going on here. Get involved in my kid's life.
Yep. And I think sometimes one of the things that I found too is that, I think we spend so much time on social media. We see the intensity of the combativeness, but I think in any well-meaning community, I believe it's very possible to avoid the combativeness. I think social media access has taught us that, no, if I open up my mouth, this fight happens. That's so not necessarily true, because when you begin taking a chance of saying, oh, I heard what you said, and I got to tell you, I couldn't disagree more. That in communities like this, more often than not, people will go, oh, okay. So how is that, or why is that?
Yeah.
I really think that we are scared to get involved because we feel we'll become that social media picture in that video where somebody goes nuts. Believe you me, those video clips are set up in places where people are going to go nuts. But and yes, sometimes it gets a little crazy at a place like this, but you got to understand, if you're willing to go, you're going to find out, oh, wait a minute, maybe I can say something and somebody will listen.
Yeah.
And we're it's got us timid about getting into a fight that really isn't a fight. It's just no, we do need your opinion. We are looking for a larger batch of sway to get this decision won. And this fear keeps people from getting involved in that, I think.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And it's what they call it self-censorship. If you listen to some conservative commentators, they say, I will censor because I just don't want people to be upset about this and do these other. And it's a tactic that socialists have used for generations because it shuts up your opponent.
Yeah.
I'm not going to listen even to his content. I'm just going to tell you what a jerk he is and try to get as many people to agree with me.
Right.
Rather than listen to the content of the discussion and maybe come to an agreement or a disagreement. That doesn't even matter. But that's not what this stuff is, happening.
I got to pick on something here, and I've never met this individual, and this is not an attempt. I just want to look at some information here. I want to talk about this information, and this is not an attempt to slander or put down this individual. Her name is Becky Bilby. Becky Bilby is the director she's not a board member. She's the director for the library there. And so because it's part of the public domain, I went to her Facebook page. And, in the heat of everything that's going on in regards to this 12-year-old girl checking out a book, that book being from the adult section, and the library okaying that, sending her home in that. And I don't know the details, okay? I've only heard some things, and I'm not trying to point the fingers at even the board, because the two resources that I have on the Sioux Center Library have both stated they're consulting with lawyers and attorneys, and they're trying to find out what's lawful, what's not lawful. I can appreciate that approach if that's what's going on. And I'll say, okay, kudos you, that's fine. So Becky Bilby is the director. And what's interesting to me is just on her Facebook page here, one of the things she states is, hey, don't mind me if you see my eyes closed for a minute, my hands in the air. Oh, God is so good, or he is good. And I love, the implication is I just love worshiping or singing while I'm going down the road. And I've seen that kind of statement before, right? And I went, oh, wow, this is the director. And on her own post, she's saying, she's displaying that she has some sort of faith in God. So I scroll down through her feed, and then she says, hey, we lost another good one. And that's when Vody Bakken died. I'm like, no, wait a minute. This is the director of Sioux Center Library? Vody Bakken is rolling over in his grave right now.
Yeah. He's not on board with that at all.
This might bring Vody Bakken from the dead. And Vody might walk right into Sioux Center Library. Because, and who knows now, again, I'm sorry, Becky, I'm not trying to, maybe Becky is the conservative. Maybe she's the lone conservative there.
Could be.
Maybe that's the case. So the point I'm trying to make here is that Becky Bilby, who is a public official there, she is professing in some level faith, but she's in the heat of it. Now, whether she's for it or whether she's against it, I don't know, but you need people to come on and start doing combativeness in this, because here's whether she's conservative or liberal, I don't know. And by the way, I'd like to almost know, every board almost needs to be a rule. All right, if there's 12 members on the board, 6 of them need to be Democrats and 6 of them need to be Republicans, or split that up and get independents in there or whatever, libertarians, I don't care, but it almost needs to be a rule just so you get different thinking in there.
Yeah.
Because it's not that way.
Not at all.
And so what's interesting is that she might be a very well-meaning young lady. She's got kids. I can appreciate that. Family woman, honors her husband somewhere in there for his birthday. I'm like, hey, this is what I would consider normal family. However, I Google this, purpose of the library, and this is a general statement from theprinch.com. It says this, general purpose, because I'm going, why are libraries that? What's the purpose? What's the intent? It's so important for people to know what that is in life. So what's the purpose here? Public libraries play an important role in supporting education. Interesting, that's the first statement, right? Because all their Time magazines and adult content in there, supporting education and literacy. I can tell you what, if your kid's 5 and you teach them to read through the Bible in a year, they're going to be literate. Anyway, it says the libraries provide countless resources such as educational. So there's education right out front again.
Absolutely.
It's educational materials, trainings, courses, scientific publications, et cetera, to visitors. Public libraries provide their service not only face-to-face, but some of them also have integrated e-learning. So according to this statement, it's saying it is public libraries play an important role in supporting education and literacy and providing resources. Listen to what Becky Bilby says in the Sioux Center Library in regards to the stance that they have taken. Listen to this. It has been my privilege to serve Sioux Center for the past 15 years, said Library Director Becky Bilby. Our mission is to inspire lifelong learning. Now, that means you're the director of the way the learning's going, if you're the one that inspires it. And she may not even understand that what she just said there is not her role. Inspiring lifelong learning, advanced knowledge, and strengthening our community. This is the same woman that touted that we lost Vodi Bakken, who apparently doesn't understand that if the library is a resource, which is what I have grown up to understand it to be, she's saying the library is something that should inspire people. To me, that's a parental role. And in some cases, a teacher's role. In some cases.
Absolutely.
A teacher's role is to inspire that kid to want. But that's not the library. It's almost like the library's like, nah, we're not content with being a resource. We want to be the ones that direct what information can be here. And that is why I believe the vote was 7-8. They chose to keep the book when the parents asked if that book could just be removed from the library. And so only one person voted to remove the book. Now, maybe there's legal ramifications for that, but I'm saying whether it's well-meaning, or misinformation for Becky Bilby, perhaps there's a slant that everybody wants to be in control of something. Well, we run a library, but our job is to direct people. No. I should walk in there and direct whatever I want by the resources you have. I should come in with what I desire and come in there and find out what you have, but you shouldn't have stuff there to try to get me to that content or allow me if it's not appropriate.
Well, and here's something too, because all that, it's interesting when you hear them talk about it. They almost talk about it as, do you understand the agenda? Do you understand that we're trying to do here? Do you understand the agenda? They really throw it in your face because it's like,
oh my gosh,
what in the world? Amazon isn't inspiring me to learn, but that's where I buy some of my books.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've got a big library at home. All these books that I buy, and I would say 98% of them are nonfiction. Just fascinating stuff about what's happened to people in the world. No one is advocating for not reading or going to a library. That's not the case at all. But so we talked about this before, brother, and this kind of hit me again today. Distinct agenda written up in the book called The Naked Communist in the 1950s about this is the template of how you break down America. This is the template of how you break down a Christian nation. So here's something interesting. Here's a couple interesting things. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Put the party line in the textbooks. Now, let me go down a couple to number 24. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of the speech and free press. Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting, now listen to this, pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radios, and TV. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, unhealthy, and healthy. And then the very next one, infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. It's all tied right next to each other. So if we were to look at this situation, I could put 3 of those in place.
Just in one,
just in this one situation.
Just in this one situation.
And so for me, I looked at this stuff 20 years ago and went, oh, interesting.
Right.
And now I'm going, holy smokes.
Right.
This stuff surfaces almost constantly. And it's the successful application of one of these points in the agenda.
Right.
Completely successful. And so you look at this, and then they turn into a different argument, not realizing that this is what you do to break down a society. This is why all these agenda pieces were in place. And then to have this person that you're talking about saying, hey, listen, this is my inspiration. We're doing this.
We're here
drive
to
the next thing I'm going.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
You've got to be kidding me.
No. Yeah. When we go back to that, every now and then, Glenn, I think we're in a peaceful moment where I think things are going to be okay. And then it takes something like this to go, whoops, I was sitting on my laurels. Oops, I was getting a little soft. I was enjoying my peace just a little too much. I'll be the first to admit that. I don't want to be a violent man, but I'm remembered going, you know what? There's a reason we have a podcast like this. There's a reason we get on our knees before Jesus Christ every day and say, please bear our burdens. Please forgive me. And I am available for you. What would you have me do?
Exactly.
That's Christianity. It's not going to church. It's not going through the programs. It's not taking your communion. It's not all that kind of junk that's going on where people go, oh, this is Christianity. It's not. You get up in the morning, you give yourself over to the power of the Spirit of the living God because he's alive. And now you follow that command. Yep. And people don't fear that, which is why this kind of lunacy is going on. And there's such an attack on it. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, shoot, again, male and growing up as a teen, how easy is it to infiltrate one little shred of pornography or sensuality or whatever? Shoot, the hormones are sitting there going, yeah, of course. That will grab it'll grab any person, but it'll grab the male men first. It'll draw them first. Now, we have a whole society filled with it now with the ladies too, but I want to say, yes, this is a weakness. And yes, there has to be something that goes on with the church where the men go, you know what? This is not good. And I need to exercise self-control. Lust can't be a part of that. And I feel like one of the things that slows people from going to go defend this is their own guilt conscience is hitting them. And that's what that's what going to Jesus is for. But you should be able to go to church and say, oh, pastor, hey, brother and Lord, man, I got to call you out. Guess what? I've been involved in this for 10 years. And you know what? I need to be able to go to the library and say with a clear conscience, I don't think this should be happening. Right. Problem is, see, that's part of what the church is there for. And so, again, the church is being weak in what it's supposed to be for. Right. Again, I go kudos to the Catholics. Go confess to your priest. The Pentecostals could use that a little bit.
We sure could.
It doesn't have to be your priest, but you got to go confess. And so this is a part of the problem that we have going on here in regards to this. And it's indoctrinating. It's happening at the educational level. This isn't about freedom of press. This isn't about, this is about a moral code that's being ignored altogether and a people that are not sure how to strengthen themselves enough to go against that.
If it was about freedom, then you could go to any public school and there could be all types of books from Josh McDowell or any of the other big Christian literacy guys about Christ, about salvation, about Old Testament history, New Testament history. Yeah. But the second that happens, the schools come unglued saying that you are violating this, you're violating that. I support the Alliance Defending Freedom Legal Group, and this is the number one thing they deal with is First Amendment rights. And it always, always, always comes from either an educational group or the LGBT.
Yeah.
Every single time, to the tunes of millions of dollars spent in legal fees every year, just so people can practice their First Amendment rights. So there's no school administrator saying, yeah, let's bring the gospel in our church and put a Bible in a library that kids can just come check out when they want to, or even a book about the testimony of a person that detransitioned.
Right.
And they've got their testimony in a book and put that in the library. You will never see it. They forbid it. So when they say you're forbidding books and you're censoring, that is utter garbage.
Absolutely.
Because you just don't toe the party line, and that's not what they can tolerate.
And they need to be challenged with that and say, oh, what books do you forbid? No, tell me which ones.
Oh,
And you
they
start
all
pulling
do.
out your Christian repertoire and say, thank you. We agree on this. And all these books I'm bringing in the library, and watch them come unglued.
Oh, every time.
And what you find out, they're just owning the talking point is it
Yep.
on this. And with that being said, when people say, and it's interesting societally where we're at, because freedom of press, freedom of speech, whoever owns the conversation is the one that wins it. Because the fact of the matter is, all these people saying, well, you can't squelch that, that might be adult content, but kids need to make a decision. Just like you said, they squelch all day long. California, 5 years ago, two laws that were introduced in there, that one, you couldn't carry your Bible, and two, you couldn't read your Bible in public. Really?
Isn't that censorship?
Where was the censorship crowd? Where were they? Nowhere to be seen. You know why? Because one, they're godless. Two, they are controlled by the enemy and the lust of their own flesh. And they are so sucked up into power. That's all they want. And that's absolutely ridiculous. I saw another thing. It doesn't play quite, but I have to. I'm going to pick on Rob Sand here for a second.
No, good old Rob.
No, Rob. Sorry, Rob. Not really. I saw this because I get tired of these things. And so when you see the obvious hypocrisy, you got to point it out. Separation of church and state. Separation church and state. Separation church and state. Separation church and state. So I was down at the State House last year, was sitting in a committee room, and heard a Democrat tout their education in the Bible and their theology and quote scripture. I wanted to stand up and say, you are removed from this room. How dare you? Leave your own party. Who says we can't say this? You've obviously been reserving it for yourself. So this was interesting. I didn't even hear a word he was saying. It had some captions in there. I couldn't see it, but it was an advertisement for Rob Sand. You know where he was standing in the middle of and talking with a giant group of people towards influence of politics?
It's hard to imagine.
In a church. I wanted to text the Rob Sand thing and say, what in the world do you think you are doing? You shouldn't even be standing in a church building. How dare you try to come together when you and your whole party and all the far leftists have been screaming separation, separation, separation. And this ad is obviously you in a church with a bunch of church pulling people. Look at the faith come. I want to say, sorry, every time you say you're middle of the road, you're just a stinking hypocrite. You're just a flat out stinking hypocrite. And if you'd like to apologize by saying, you're right, I believe in, and I want to know from Rob Sand, do you believe church and state should be merged? Because I saw the ad. What are you implying? It should be merged? Your faith should be part of it, or shouldn't? Make up your dang minds, left. Make up your minds. Because I made up my mind a long time ago. You cannot separate the two, my friend.
No.
You cannot separate the two. And it got my blood boiling again.
Agenda is an interesting thing because it means that you will do or say anything to get the agenda done. That there was some rhetoric in the 1970s. Some claim this, something Paul Alinsky said back in the day, which was the issue is never the issue. The issue is the revolution.
Right.
And we see it clearly. So these people don't come here saying, oh my gosh, we'll get to the bottom of truth and then we'll resolve it from there. You lie, cheat, and steal to the best of your ability to push the agenda. Yeah. And the agenda guarantees you a political station at the victory table of being a leader of this new world that you've created. Yes. And so it's okay to lie as long as it's pushing the agenda. So Rob Sand, no one will ask him this question, Mr. Sand, do you agree with the proponents of the Democratic Party platform? And just read them down. And either A, will turn the camera off, or B, lie through his teeth about it. Yep. But he will not, no one asks him that. Right. So there's a way of lying by not telling the whole truth. And this applies to Republicans every minute of the day. So I'm not saying this is a Democrat thing, but you will not go to too many places where there's government and have them tell you the truth. Yep. Because they know the agenda. They know what they're trying to do. The agenda might be, I need corporate dollars in my back pocket to produce this bill. So I need to lie, cheat, and steal to make that happen. It happens all the time. You just don't find these people telling the truth. And unfortunately for me, I'm that kind of guy that thinks, well, gosh, if they just knew the truth. Right. Then we could have no, that's not the game going on here.
Not at all.
Nobody wants to know the truth. The agenda must go on.
Without question. I think something that needs to be spoken to is when you say the agenda, people don't understand that, or people need to understand, maybe some people understand, an agenda is what you have come to believe in to do with your life. And so if you're an individual that says, well, I believe in separation of church and state, and if people want to go to whatever church they want to, that's fine. My favorite one is I myself am Catholic, or I myself am
Right.
Lutheran, or the new one. I've never heard
Right.
somebody quote it, but they've lied through their teeth around it. I myself am Assemblies of God, but people need to be able to. Oh, now wait a minute. What agenda are you connected to?
Yeah.
So you're not agendaed to Christ, and
Right.
this is where I think we're living in a time, Glenn, where people are going to have to make a determination, and it's going to have to be believers. And I think I'm going to throw this out there. I think it's going to be a bunch of atheists who get saved,
I absolutely agree.
who then are able to stand their ground because they understand. But the current church, they're too much in an agenda to look good.
Right.
And I don't think they are the ones they're going to be able to get anything done when it comes to agendaing with Christ. And so we need to be a believer, must be a person when somebody says, well, what's your political taking? And you say, I don't know, I'm subservient to the word of God and the one who saved me. And if we can't start saying that in the political meetings, then you're part of an agenda.
No doubt.
Then you're part of a Republican agenda. You're part of a Democrat agenda. I mean, I've had Republicans to my face say, the Fifth Amendment is unconstitutional. Well, it is the Constitution. It's in there. Yeah, but it's not meant for what it said, and that shouldn't be used. And I'm like, okay. And you tout yourself as being a constitutionalist, this kind of things. But I would prefer if people start identifying, if people say, you know what, I am subject to Christ because he's alive and I am born again.
Right.
If it starts there, we have a whole new platform.
Right.
And I think that new platform is going to come in a revival moment when a bunch of unbelievers, former atheists, drug addicts, I go so far to say an entire LGBTQ community will get saved, and they will turn on the church and say, what in the world are you doing?
I know. And we're seeing it now to some degree, but it's just the media is hiding it the best they can.
Oh gosh, yes.
And there's a couple of things that came to mind when you mentioned this. One, I was in Seattle here a few days ago, and I thought, I'm gonna maybe I'll find a church.
God's country.
God's country. I'll see if I can find a church. I'm downtown. Seattle's a beautiful city. Beautiful city. But it was pouring rain. It's like, oh great. I don't have any rain gear. I'm not gonna be able to go anyway, but I'm gonna look. So I looked for an hour to find a church in downtown Seattle. An hour. I found one that was anywhere near ballpark what a Christian church would be. One. And I must have looked at 50. I found one. So that's issue number one, right? Church means nothing. That's a non-statement. Yeah. Generically.
Yeah, social.
But the other thing is the agenda. If you believe that the Bible is God's word, the Bible meaning the book is God's word, it is the word of God, then the Revelation chapter, the Revelation letter says, here's what comes in the last days. We've talked about it here, but I thought it's worth reiterating. It is a government established that is anti-God in every way, will take ultimate power over the people, will require that they worship this new God that ends up being a man, that ends up being Antichrist, and will participate in this new global setting. And so when we see these little things like a library in Sioux Center, Iowa, we're just seeing another symptom of that tragic physical ailment that the world will have in the last days.
Yeah.
Because this is the push. This is the agenda that they're pushing. Now, most people in this agenda don't understand this. They think, oh, gosh, just a little more communism will be better for everybody. We just haven't practiced the model to its full extent. And so I can see a model where it finally comes up and they say, oh gosh, look at this new government. It's awesome. This new guy's great. And after all, we can't pay off this national debt, but he's offering us amnesty from that debt obligation because we're going to now serve him and the government and the state. So all these things tie into that in one way or another. Yeah. You're serving the government and the state. Any socialist that comes to you and saying we're going to be more free is either ignorant or is lying to you. Yeah. Socialism will eventually translate to that kind of system where you're giving your rights away to another person. And the Bible says that'll come to such a degree that you'll actually worship the government and the person that's in charge of it. Yes. And you won't worship God anymore because you won't be allowed to. So these are not little things. These are symptoms of a terminally ill, sinful world.
Yes, yes. And the church is ill. It's sick. and they have an illness within that doesn't allow them to walk healthy and therefore walk true. I'm trying to think how many years, 15, 16 years ago, we had that imam come and speak at our children's classroom. And I wrote an article, and it went ballistic. I got apologies from the Johnston School Board, got a meeting, and I didn't ask for any of it. I showed up at a school board meeting. I was approached to I understand you're the one that wrote this article. Jan Michelson read it on there, got in his hands. He read it right on there. And I can't remember who who's the new modern, I call him, he's a kind of a prophetic talk show host, but he was the afternoon guy. And he read it also that afternoon, the article against the church about the pulpits being filled with soft speeches and such. And this is what we get. An imam come into a classroom and say, Jesus Christ cannot, of course, be God. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty darn bold statement. Excuse me. That's a bold lie.
Well, you say a counter-revolutionary statement like that in Islamic country.
Oh,
you won't survive the day.
You won't breathe. Steve Dace, he was the other guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they both got the article that day, and both of them read it on the air. And so within a year of that, I did something I'd never thought I would do before. And that's why we were White Dove Ministries before, but we were just music and worship. And we served different denominations or churches in the area, leading worship and stuff for them. And we established a church because I thought, oh my gosh, I think the Lord is saying to us, we have to be about saying no, but of course, Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And that's the counter statement. We've kind of built the whole ministry on it in the end. In the course of that, we rented Johnston's, they have a barn next to the library in Johnston, and it's available for outreaches or family events, or you can rent it and just host something in there as an event center. And so we did. I thought, you know what? Well, let's have a community outreach, and we'll have a church service, and it'll all be built on worship, and we'll proclaim the gospel. So we made up these cute little pamphlets, simple flat pieces of paper, and it was a big eye on there, and right in the pupil in the eye was the cross, as if that eye was looking for truth, and boom, it found the cross. It was a lady that did the design, was phenomenal. And so we printed those out, and I'm going around Johnston, and hey, in the barber shop, sure, hang it up, fine, no problem. Hey, going to the Ace Hardware, sure, no problem, hang it up. Went into Johnston's library. And I said, yeah, we're having an event at your partner right over here in the barn, and we're just going to local church group here, non-for-profit. I had already worked with the city. The city already gave us a huge discount. Johnston already said, oh, you're non-for-profit? Are you selling tickets? Nope. Okay, well, it's only going to be $80 to you guys instead of $600 or whatever. Wow. And they're like, yeah, non-for-profit church, fine. Go ahead, use it, no problem. So I walked into the public library, and I had this cool little poster, and they had room all over the board for stuff, public stuff. That's what it's for. Right. Walked in there to the lady, just like anybody else, any ownership or whatever. I said, hey, can we hang this up on the thing? And they picked it up and they said, nope, that fast. Nope, can't do that because of separation of church and state.
Oh, good grief.
And I sat there befuddled. And I got to say, I was young enough in this process at that time that I just went, well, there's nothing more for me to do. And then a few days later, I walked in there to check something out for the kids, and there was a church organization that was having a social function in there, and their ad was right on the thing. And if I would have had half a mind about me, I would have gone to the director and said, yeah, so lawsuit sounds like something maybe you and I should be chatting about right now. But the public library turned down putting a single piece of paper that just said, come and worship with us. I had an eyeball on it with a cross in the middle. That was it. They said, oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. And I learned even then, that was one of the first times I learned, there's something called absolute bias, and you indoctrinate people, and there's things you are unwilling to hear and you don't want. And I thought, this isn't a public library. This library is run by a system, a system of religion that is Antichrist. And that was a problem. Brother, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's called an agenda. I'm going to read here. These are the names. And I hope these people, as much as this podcast goes around and there's a picture of them, you can go to SiouxCenterLibrary.org, SiouxCenterLibrary.org. This is public information. So I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. Here's your heroes right here. Here's all the heroes that are hiding behind the laws. and are unwilling to accept responsibility for one of these gals or whoever works there checked out this book to a 12-year-old, and nobody wants to have this. I commented on the Iowa Standard. I said, when this all came out, I said, you know what? If you take some middle-aged guy, he's a single guy, he goes out with this book and several copies, and he sits out in front of the library and hands them to 12-year-olds. I said, what does that make the librarian that checked this out to the girl? And some libtard got on there and says, oh, this doesn't even mean anything. What you're talking about, it means nothing. That's the argument. That's how stupid the argument is. This guy was absolutely asinine stupid. And I thought, you obviously are an agenda. You have immoral issues that you're not reconciled with Christ, because if you can't see that this, and I said, the society would look at that guy and say, hey, what are you doing?
Legally, he could have issues.
Absolutely. You'd come around and go, hey, what are you doing, buddy? Are you, a sexual pervert? Are you a pedophile? Are you, the whole community would come down on him. And I'm sure the far left would go, yeah, that's terrible, except for we promote it as long as it's under the law.
It's not terrible if we're doing it.
It's not terrible if we're doing it in the library. And I'm going to say the same thing. This is how we need to look at things societally. If some Joe Blow can't walk in there and hand out adult content to 10-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and 12-year-olds, you better be okay with that if you're okay with this being available. Now, am I saying the book has to go from the library? The local community does need to find that out. I might not appreciate the book being there, but I also don't appreciate a 5-year-old drinking powerful alcohol. So you got to show your ID.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be a librarian, you're going to be responsible, and that book's going to be in there, you better take responsibility for what walks out that door, and you better know what kid you're handing that to, and you better believe a parent should probably get a phone call if you're half your weight in salt as being a moral individual that votes for children, and none of this horse hockey. So here are these individuals: Andrew Galanzi, Ruth Clark, Tara Burkenpaz, Lisa Dykstra, Lynn Van Beek, Logan Kasky, Brian Vandervlay. And if I mispronounce your name, too bad. Terry Hubbard. I'll learn to pronounce them when you have a concern for the children you vote for.
Okay.
And Angela's Bahena. So all these individuals, I don't know who voted no, and the rest of them voted yes. And I'm not here to say you haven't tried to figure out what the law is. I pray to God you're not hiding behind it. Because what we need in Des Moines in the school district and in library communities like this is people saying, we don't want to be a part of the problem. We want to come together for the sake of the parents who are actually the rock stars, not the kids.
Exactly.
Don't vote for children, vote for parents, because they're the taxpayers and they bear the responsibility of those children.
I know.
When you and I argued with those protesters downtown years ago, and that gal looked me square in the eye. She goes, you were indoctrinated by your parents. And I went, absolutely. Who else is supposed to indoctrinate you? That's their responsibility, not you. And she was absolutely saying the colleges, the schools, and the Democrat Party should be the one educating you, not your parents. That is satanic. That is absolutely satanic.
It is agenda to the core. No opposing viewpoint, just ours.
At the bare base minimum as a believer, what do you think step one is for us, Glenn? What do we need to do individually to wrap our minds around, you know what, I've never been to one of those meetings. What do we need to do first as a Christian to get there?
Well, brave new world. Just understand where we're living, what's going on. This isn't an isolated case. This happens constantly. It's if you're a parent in particular, and let's just say you don't believe in God, but you're concerned about this stuff going on. You need to get off your butt and just go see what your kids are doing. Go to the library and look around. Yeah. If you are a believer and you say, okay, I believe in God and I'm a disciple of His and I follow Him in His ways, well, you need to demonstrate it.
Right.
Don't tell us. That's nonsense. Yeah. Go do it. Go find out what's there. Do I support what's there? How do I get involved in making sure that this doesn't happen? And then, so those folks up in Sioux Center, if I was up there and that was part of my deal, I'd be asking where did this book come from and who brought it here? And why did they bring it here? I'd like to talk to the author. I'd like to talk to the local police department and say, do we support this type of sexual assault on our children? And if so, I'd like to know what the law is. We're just going to have to get involved. Yeah. It's like COVID. This same group of people said, you have to do this, this, this. And the law said, no, you don't. So you're going to need to go find out what that is. Not in a violent fashion, not swearing and getting into somebody's face. That is not scriptural at all. But get involved and don't back down. Don't self-censor. In fact, I get angrier and angrier when I think that I'm self-censoring myself.
I know.
It's like, no. There's too many people that have died in this nation so that I can talk. I'm going to talk and you're going to listen.
Yeah.
You don't like me? Great. I don't like you either, but you're going to hear what I've got to say.
Right.
And we just need to be that kind of person because there are things at stake. Now, is that going to solve all the problems? No. Is it going to stop the flow of the agenda? In my opinion, no.
Yeah.
I think it's checkmate. I think things are just going to keep pressing on. But if we don't get involved at that last day, God will ask us, what did you do? Because you know what you were supposed to do because I told you.
Yeah.
And I drew you and you felt it in your soul.
Yep.
And that's the question I'm going to have to answer him and say, yeah, I did what you asked me. And every person that claims Christ is going to have ask that same question of themselves right now. Lord, what is it you want me to do with this situation? And then listen to him and do it. And that'll be all you can do.
Yes. The words that God will say is either depart from me, I never knew you, or well done, good and faithful servant. And servant means you approach God and say, what am I to do?
Yep.
That's what that means. And if nobody has that backing, if nobody knows that they are standing right before God in what they're doing, they're not making it up. They're presenting themselves to God and saying, is this right, God? Because I'm going to be judged by you.
Yep.
Is this right, what I'm doing? And library director Becky Bilby said that the library, this was a part of that article, says library remains to be committed serving the full community. I hope she's not hiding behind the terminology full community. Well, we can't separate this or this or this. I hope that if somebody who worships with their eyes shut while they're driving, somebody who honors the late great Vodi Bakken, wonderful teacher of the word, foundational teacher of the word, I hope she's not hiding her Christianity so that the full community will approve of her, because these are the kind of stands we have. And Becky, if you are taking that stand, we encourage you and would pray for you in that. And I hope that's the case. Yep. And we're not hiding behind it in this case. And the other thing I want to say to the listeners of this podcast too, is that if you've been nervous about going to something like this because you don't think you have the time, I always say start small. I don't go to every single board meeting that's available to me in all the school districts that are around me or the libraries and that, but pick one, try it. Get a hold of your spouse and say, you know what, let's try this once.
Yep.
And see what happens. And if your heart is faint, this is very important for the listeners of this podcast. If your heart is faint because your life is not square with the Lord, then by all means, get square with the Lord by coming to him and say, you know what, this is actually who I am and I need your mercy, Lord Jesus. And get the mercy of God and the grace of God that comes from acknowledging a wrong life, a wrong lifestyle, a sinful nature, or you have never given your will over to God. Go do that first. I'm here to tell you, when Paul says this in the New Testament, he says, my conscience is clear. My conscience is clean. No one can judge me. He confidently gets whipped because he's preaching the truth with boldness because his mind has nothing holding him back. And I want to encourage you, this might be a great opportunity for you to go, I want to experience that. And I want to tell you, it is the greatest thing ever in the history of humanity is to come to Christ and hold on to his ankles like Peter did and say, forgive me, Lord, I'm a sinful man. You will find the mercy of God, and you will find strength that maybe you've never known. As a matter of fact, what comes with that strength is the love of God within you now too. When you go to be bold, you understand that everybody's not perfect because you found the mercy of God. I want to encourage people in that too. So I do. Glenn, this has been a great conversation. I think there's going to be more of this.
Unfortunately.
You've got, and we're not trying to point at the libraries or the schools. What we're trying to point at is there's an ideal here and it comes from behind. And if we're Christians, we'll recognize that and go, no, it's Jesus we serve. It's absolutely Jesus we serve in this. And to you, the listener, I hope the same is true of you. Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and the salvation and choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. God bless.